Welcome back to Nerds by Screenlight. My name is Aaron.
I'm Phil.
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Zoe.
And today's episode is the long-awaited, the long ballyhooed sit-down with the movie The Grave of the Fireflies, which is an animated movie from Japan.
Yep, Studio Ghibli.
Studio Ghibli. And it's going to be interesting because, it's an interesting film. So we were debating as to what our opener would be. And the conclusion was either the most emotional movie / moment, or what I'm going with is the most shocking / like, you've got to be kidding me moment that really just kind of made me not like the movie anymore. So we'll go around the round table, the half round table. Actually, we don't have a full round table, but we'll go around the half moon and go from there. So does anyone want to start, or should I start?
You can go first.
Okay. So there's a movie called Arlington Road. It's an older movie, not like older in the I think 2000s. And if I'm remembering this movie correctly, it is a kind of like there's a lot of information that's not given to you, and it's very kind of like twists and turns and things are happening, and there's hints that something's going to happen. There's going to be with the character that we're following or whatever, that they're going to do something bad, and there's like a bomb or something's happening. And the end of the movie, if I'm remembering correctly, is that they somehow, through the machinations of the script, one of the characters drives a van into a building. The camera zooms out, and it's the FBI building in Washington, D.C., which then promptly explodes. It is an infuriating moment.
No kidding.
Because I hated it with a passion. I didn't like the way the movie was being told. It wasn't really telling me everything, and the surprise was it was a super real big downer. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And so I've never watched it again. I've never recommended it to anybody. I've avoided the movie like no other because it was so infuriating and frustrating. So my emotional reaction to it was just like, you've got to be kidding me. No, this is not. No, we're done here. Get out of my face. So that's mine.
Okay.
Phil.
Well, the one I have that gives me an emotional reaction. Oh, that sounded crazy. All right. Yeah.
That's a good word for it.
It's a movie called Unthinkable.
Oh.
But I don't remember exactly why. So instead, I will tell you about my sister's most emotional moment. And it was when we were kids. There's this animated movie, I think it's Disney, called Spirit, about a horse. And there's a moment where my whole audio just
Audio.
We're getting it.
audio. Okay. There's a moment where for a good bit of the movie, you're led to believe that Spirit had died.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And my poor little baby sister just starts wailing, crying. And then it's revealed at the end that the horse is still alive. My sister still cried.
Aww.
So that's what I got for.
Okay. That's fair. Vicki.
Been having a hard time with this. I'm more of I don't cry hard with movies usually. I can tear up, but books can get to me. I can think of several books. So when I was trying to think of a movie, most recently when we did Life is a House, there was that one scene where I actually started sobbing during a movie. I guess I'll tie in the end of the Hunger Games. This is more when I read it in the book, but the movie I feel portrayed it well when Katniss comes home and she runs into her cat and she's explaining to the cat that her sister's gone. Yeah. And she's just hysterical. That when I read that in the book, even talking about it now, that scene just got to me. And in the book, the cat warms up to Katniss for the first time. Okay. After that, it's she kind of something about that just really gets me. 'Cause she's hated that cat for the entire series, and it's just this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Zoe.
Okay, so when you asked the question, the first thing that popped in my head was The Lion King, and it would be this scene where obviously his father dies.
Oh, that's sad.
And I'm just gonna be real honest. If I watched it even today, I probably would still cry. So
that's rough.
It's just really intense and emotional.
To be fair, that's why I don't watch Bambi.
One, I've never watched Bambi.
Really?
And once someone ruined it, I was like, I don't want to watch it now anyway.
Oh, that is sad. That's a sad movie to see as a kid.
So an interesting. I just kind of browse the internet sometimes when looking at memes or whatever. I'm not like I don't look at them. I don't go looking for them. I just kind of browse through Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And there was a post that because of course the live action Disney remakes have not done well in the opinion of audiences and whoever. And they drew a comparison like just by image of the scene where Simba sees the stampede happening and the look on the cartoon's face. Yeah. And they compare it with the image of the actual live action production. Right. And it's just like, you've got to be kidding me. This is a joke. This is the biggest joke you've ever put on film. And this is why a lot of people are really not happy about the live action stuff, because it doesn't, you're taking something that was brilliant in the original sense. And
the way those wildebeests ran down the cliff edges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Defying gravity.
Yep. It's a lot of that. So they're apparently doing, which my fingers are crossed that it will do well. Hopefully they're doing a Moana live action. They announced the actress; she is Pacific Islander, which is a positive in that piece. Moana 2 is actually on its way out to us at some point in the near future. They announced that the trailer came out.
Yeah, we saw it. I saw it at Inside Out too.
Wait. So they're going to do the second animated and do a live.
They're working on a live action.
Oh my gosh!
Disney doesn't know how to balance anything.
Just pause.
Right. They don't know how to do that. They're all about printing that money.
I guess
they need that funding to keep their empire alive. Apparently, I don't know.
You just focus your energy on Pixar. They're doing a good. Inside Out 2 is great.
Oh, I've heard so many good things on TikTok.
That's very good.
Yeah. So our fingers are crossed, and our hope remains that Pixar will lift all boats with the water of awesomeness that they carry. All right. When we come back, we're going to take a look at a movie that you really can't actually watch anywhere. Phil's going to talk us through that after the break, and then we're going to talk to you about the movie and tell you all the things that you'll never probably be able to see unless you custom order it from eBay or something, however you got it. We'll talk about that here after the break. On Nerds by Screenlight, a movie that you haven't seen. If you can get a chance to find it somehow, you absolutely should. It is a fantastic, brilliant movie. And we're going to talk about it here next on Nerds by Screenlight. My name's Aaron.
I'm Phil.
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Zoe.
And the podcast starts now.
Get nerdy with me. Talk nerdy to me. Get nerdy with me. All I really need for you to do is just please.
I can stop.
Talk to me. Talk nerdy to
me. All right, welcome back to Nerds by Screenlight. My name is Aaron.
I'm Phil.
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Zoe.
And it's Grave of the Fireflies. So before we launch into the talking about the movie, Phil, how hard is this movie to watch?
It's almost impossible. Unless you got a lot of money.
Right.
So the story behind it is it's a Studio Ghibli movie, but they do not own the story.
Okay.
Someone else owns the story, and that person it's basically a licensing issue. Okay. So Studio Ghibli can't sell it to you.
Jeez.
No one can sell it to you. You can only find it used.
Okay.
And you're looking at lowest price, $50.
Jeez.
That's the lowest price, and that's not even the only problem. This movie comes in 2 regions.
Okay.
Region 1, Region 2. I forget which one is American, but one region.
U.S. is Region 1, I believe.
Yeah. So Region 2 is what you're mostly going to find on the internet.
Yeah.
And they will not work in American DVD players.
Yep.
Oh.
So it took my mom on an adventure, going through eBay and all these online sellers, and she finally found Region 1. Not only that, but an English version, so we didn't have to watch it subtitled.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yeah,
helpful.
It was good. So the reality of this is that it is a very hard movie until they figure out the licensing.
It's almost at this point lost media.
Yeah. And it's interesting to say that in 2024. Everything is accessible. Everything is downloadable. You can find it eventually.
It's not like you go to Blockbuster and you're like, oh, it's sold out again.
Right.
It's so crazy because it's like one of those things that you can't even rent.
Yeah.
You can't rent it on YouTube. You can't rent it on
Amazon or any of those things, Hulu, whatever.
It says that it was on Vudu.
Oh,
but you go there and the movie's not there. It's just the trailer.
Just the trailer. Lovely. Gotta love it.
It's like that's tantalizing right there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I think there's a larger conversation down the road to be had about how we don't own the media anymore. It's all held through these Amazons, these Steam companies, where we don't own our physical media. We are all held hostage if they ever decide to. And some companies have done this with varying levels of success, and people have gotten very upset with companies when they've pulled this kind of subscription thing where oh no, you don't own that, and people are like, we do, and now it's on, let's go.
There was a video game that came out recently that they had pulled and gave everyone refunds, and they're like, nope, you can't buy it, it's not yours.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was crazy. Well, and there's another game through Ubisoft, our favorite people to talk about in not very nice terms, but one of the original the Crew games.
They took it. Yeah,
they took it down. Because
perfect example.
The Crew primarily was an online game. It did have a single player version or single player option, I think, but primarily it was all online stuff. And so they were like, no, we're taking the servers down, and because it's got online features built into it, we're zonking the game. The game is gone.
Yeah, buy the new one.
Yeah, buy the new one. Ha ha ha. And this is a thing that a lot of people are kind of cautioning against because, you're going to have these games that are going to sell big, but eventually those online connectivities that keep them DRM free or keep the DRM checked, those servers might go away. That company might shut down. There are plenty of games out there that digital rights management services software makes it unplayable sometimes because you can't get to those servers anymore. You can't get up. It's a whole thing. So there you go. There's your uplifting message for your technology corner for a podcast episode in the future.
Buy physical copies.
Yeah, buy physical media, buy physical photos. Do the things. You want to be able to own it. Adobe recently, about a couple years back, went to a subscription model. So the services we use to edit this podcast through Audition, it's a part of a creative bundle that I pay monthly for. And it's bonkers that's where we're
expensive.
at. It's well, teachers and students we get a break, but normal folks, there's no break.
Yeah.
And it's rough. And the thing is that Adobe is they're the big boys. They're the ones that have the good stuff. So that's an episode for another time. For now, let us dig in to the Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
So it's stylistically closer. It's not quite anime, I would say.
It's old school anime.
Yeah.
If you think something that most people listening to us could identify, think back to Astro Boy.
Yeah.
It's very much in that kind of.
Well, yeah, because this is from 1988.
Yeah, that's pretty old.
So.
They were. Yeah, they. That. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Continue.
It happens. So it's a really great, if you look overall, taking a step back and looking at the full movie and the colors and the aesthetic and just how they show things and how you get a feeling for things, it's a masterful job. And that's a lot of, and we circle back to this dead horse because we bury it and then we bring it back up the next week, electroshock it back to life like Frankenstein, and then we beat it, and then we put it back to bed again, and then the next week, whatever.
You say we.
Okay, it's me.
You.
It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. So we talk a lot about the original content and how good old school movies and old school shows were. And this was a compelling film. This was the art style stands up.
Yeah,
it holds up. It's beautiful. It's brilliantly told. And you look at a lot of the new stuff in this day and age, and it just looks shiny and pretty.
Just kind of cheap.
Yeah. And it's there is something to be said for hand-drawn content that makes and evokes and brings emotion and story. And so you're never gonna hear me say oh, 2024 movies are amazing, because they're okay. But there's a lot of stuff that we're not doing very well with quality of story and the Mad Max sequel bombed at the box office.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, but I've
the reviews
heard
were good.
Yeah, I watched some YouTubers review it, and they love it.
So
they're go to the movies
right.
and watch it. And
here's what I think happened is that people they're tired of Marvel. They're exhausted. They're exhausted with DC. They're exhausted with Star Wars. They're exhausted with all these sequels and series and Star Wars and all that stuff. People are like, the one chance we have, they're like, well, you know, it's probably a movie that's junky because all the movies I've seen have been junky, and I'm not going to spend the money to go out to it. They're also fatigued. They're fatigued with the environment, the entertainment industry. They're fatigued with a lot of the stars having things to say about their audiences, and so, in my poor opinion, the movie probably is fantastic, and it's on my list.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you've got an audience of moviegoers who are tired of being told, who are tired of giving up of their hard-earned money to watch junk, to be given a movie that's not quality, to be...
I think that's it, because, yeah, to go to the movies, let's say 2 people, you're going to spend at least like $30 somehow.
Yeah, minimum.
Well, yeah, and then you could just wait a couple months and it'll be streaming and you can watch it then.
Yeah.
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 So there's this, and I think the luster of the movie experience is gone. Like, people aren't like, ooh, it's fun to go to the movies.
And I mean, even to the one I went to last night, which I think was worth it. Like, there was a part near the end of the movie where, like, the power just shut off.
No way.
And it took a good almost 5 minutes for them to get it back up.
Oh, jeez.
And then it turned off again at the same spot.
I have never experienced that.
And the only saving grace of that moment, because there was a collective groan of frustration. There's a little kid toward the middle back who went, "You gotta be kidding me!"
Yeah, I'm
And
baffled. I'm like, what?
we all needed that moment, but they had to fast forward a little bit past it for us to watch it. But like stuff like that could happen at the movies, or like there was someone in front of us that had to be escorted out, and they were very loud and angry and inappropriate, and they were little
in a
kids.
kids
that,
movie?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So that was rough. Those are things you can't
Okay.
control about.
Right.
Where
This
your
is why
environment
we
is.
don't go to the movie. No, I'm just kidding.
But I think, Zoe, to your point, that's like we've gone to Brighton for to the AMC theater there.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, for Godzilla -1.
Well, we were in Phoenix for that.
Oh yeah, I don't remember what the one. I don't remember what the one in Brighton was.
Oh,
for.
it was Dune Part 2.
Dune. Okay, Dune Part 2.
That was worth it though.
It was, but it was also like there weren't a lot of people in the theater at that time.
Because we're like matinees. Like
Yeah.
that's how we
Oh,
roll
yeah.
if we can.
But that's the other issue is that people don't like people used to go to movie theaters and pack them out, and I'm sure they still do some
Yeah.
places, but
What they did last night. Like
right. Well, that's also rural, a smaller theater, smaller community. They're more community
well, it
oriented.
was Inside Out too. Like
Right.
that was.
Yeah. So it's almost like people. There's this part of people that don't want to be in crowds. Obviously, COVID did that number on us, but people are still hesitant to get into these movies. And who
Yeah.
wants to go to a movie to sit in a crowd when, yeah, like you said, you can get it streaming.
Yeah.
I can get it a month later. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes.
Well, and I hate to take it like a little bit darker, but honestly, since the
Yeah.
shooting in
Yeah,
Aurora,
I was
like
thinking about that.
every time I go to the movies, I'm just like scanning.
You know, it crossed
It's-
my mind. I'm like,
It's crowds in general for me.
Yeah.
Like, if there's going to be a lot of people there, I'm not going.
Yeah. I don't enjoy crowds. I never really did. I just tend to kind of just make my own way and kind of stay to the edges. But yeah, movie theaters and movies, the experience has changed, and I think COVID has a part of it, but it's also like, obviously, inflation has played a part in that. Tickets are expensive.
Yeah.
Food isn't cheap. Like, it's clearly overpriced. You would not pay the amount of money that they're asking for you normally in a normal place.
Yeah.
Because it's a movie theater. Hey, it's movie prices. And so it's like, yeah, okay, whatever, great. Why? Like,
Why?
I can just get some Orville Redenbacher boxes from the store, go sit on the couch, and get it on my big screen TV. It's affordable, and it'll last longer, and I'll watch your movie, and that'll be that. I'll pay $3 to rent it off on Amazon versus $40 to get my food and my tickets and my seat. No.
Then have to deal with all this stuff Vicki was.
I
like,
know.
oh
For
my
the saving
gosh.
grace is that I was given 2 free tickets.
Yeah.
Because that was a big reason why I'm like,
Oh, that's
okay.
nice.
So
Yeah.
that made it better. Like we paid about $10 for concession stands. So honestly, it wasn't bad. But I'm really glad we had those free tickets. Otherwise,
Yes.
I might be a little more frustrated.
Yeah.
That's
So it's funny how movies have changed. I mean, we are all old enough in this room to remember in high school going to movie theaters with
Oh,
friends
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
on the weekends and
Every
packing
weekend.
it out
This
and
is my
having a
first ever
blast
date.
and just doing that. And Pirates
Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh.
I can remember seeing, what did I see? I saw I want to say one of the Batman movies at the Continental in Denver. Continental, I don't think is in existence anymore. They closed it down. It was the big screen. It was a massive screen. But I remember those moments, and those were fun. But that fun has faded. The shooting in Aurora is one. COVID's another.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things.
You think about these crowds, you're like, am I going to get sick?
Yeah.
Because it's so crowded in here.
Yeah.
Things I think about.
Or are people going to get randomly angry in a
Right.
kids movie? Like that's still shocking to me.
That was not fun.
Yeah. Kudos to Cover Theater staff for taking care of business. So anyway, that small rabbit trail is just, and if you're listening to this and you're kind of probably either nodding along or you're like, that's not really true.
Yes, it was. I was there.
Feel free to,
that was my experience.
The overall concept of movie-going peoples and how that's changed is what I was more referring to.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Or they have us on in the background and aren't really listening.
Right.
At all.
Hey, you, we're here. Listen up.
Listen up.
We are not white noise for you.
Someone casually sweeping their kitchen just turned around right now.
To be honest, I listen to podcasts a lot of times when I'm cleaning.
And they're most often ours.
Why'd you have to out me like that? Can we please cut that out?
Because it's the truth.
You didn't have to proclaim it for the internet. I like to reminisce.
I'm not. There's no shame in that game. It's just own your truth, own your reality.
See, but it wasn't me that owned it. You just outed me.
Well, I'm here to help. Okay, so let us begin the opening scene. So this movie plays with time a little bit.
Yeah.
And I really, you don't really know. Sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you do know what's going on.
What they did reminds me of I'm sorry, The Book Thief.
Mm-hmm.
How in the beginning of The Book Thief, the guy's like, you know what? You're all gonna die. And just so you know, these people are all gonna die.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mess around. And this movie does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie it plays around with time. It also plays around with color.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of like red to show like the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clever because it's not like blam in your face. This is what's happening. It's like weaved in throughout the movie, and it's done perfectly.
They give you just enough narration to kind of know what's going on. They don't overdo it.
Yeah.
I actually really appreciated how there was limited talking, and you still were understanding what was happening.
See, that's the thing with like old anime. And while we're talking about
Show don't tell.
this anime, maybe I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but it's important to know going into this movie that after the World Wars, Japan did not have money, and they did not have money to make movies.
Yeah.
So they couldn't like afford actors and stuff like that, but they had people who were artists and talented, and so they made anime. And through anime, it was like over here on the West, we think of it as something like for children, kids.
Right.
They told some, like this movie, very important stories.
This is not for kids.
It actually has a child award, a
Does it
children's movie
really?
award. Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, they told like real stories through anime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my little asterisk there.
Okay. in the anime corner with Phil. So but I think it's because now anime has become so much more. Like it's not as like, oh, this is an anime movie. This is the anime styles and aesthetics have kind of just diversified and spread across, generational lines, but also like theme lines. It's a little bit bonkers. That's why I can't get into anime. It's really hard to figure out what is what and what's like.
I'm kind of the same way. I've always felt a little bad about it, but this one
hits the marks. This one does the way.
And at least this is like kind of like fast paced, which makes it engaging. Whereas there are some animes that are just drawn out, and you're just like, when is it going to get to the point of like what we're trying to say?
We'd like to get there, please.
Yeah.
If we could in the next.
Well, I think it
15
also
minutes.
helps us that Aaron and I are like World War II buffs. Like we really are interested in learning that kind of history. Like we like to watch documentaries. We went to the official museum in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So this is like our genre.
So this is also the warning. We should do this more often on this podcast. But spoiler alert, every which way but everywhere. Like we're gonna spoil this movie the heck out of it. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I don't want to know until I find a way to inherit a small fortune and then purchase the movie, then you probably just want to stop listening now. But since the movie you can't get to it, this is your best chance to get a feeling for it. So, spoiler alert, if you're interested in trying to find it, stop now and then come back.
Also, it's very sad.
Yes, there's
So
a lot of...
if you're having a really rough day, maybe don't listen to this podcast right now.
Yeah, not so much. So we have, again, it plays with time and presence or whatever. So we've got transients, and is this in Tokyo?
It's Kobe.
Kobe, okay. So we've got a transient. We kind of get an image of him, and he's a homeless individual. As we call them, unhoused, I guess now.
And there are several guys laying around.
Yeah. Several of them.
They're like all. So we're
Kind
at
of all in the same area.
We're at a train station, and it opens up with a boy, tattered clothes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if he's alive or not.
Yeah.
And he's like laid up against a pole, and people are walking by him, and
And making comments of disgust.
yeah, one lady like is nice and drops down some food or something, and yeah. Then the guards. What did we say? The guards.
Yeah.
Custodial staff.
I don't know what you would call them in Japan, but they're like the station officers.
Yeah.
Okay.
They mind the station. They are both probably cleaners and also like officers, and they handle the station. Like they manage all the operations of the place.
Yeah, and they're clearly used to like seeing this type of thing.
Yeah.
And they're going around like poking these guys, like, are they alive or not?
Yep.
And
They get to our guy that we've been focused on.
yeah, who's holding a fruit can.
Yep, a can of fruit snack, or not fruit snacks, fruits.
Like candies.
Like the
Candy, yeah.
candies.
Yeah, they
And-
called them fruit drops.
Yep.
But
So
in my opinion, one of the saddest things in the movie, but we don't know it yet, happens.
right.
The officer guy picks up the can and just chucks it. Like,
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, should we do this? I'll just throw it out or whatever."
and at that moment, we don't have
We
any.
have no idea, no clue what this is going to be. By the end of the movie, you'll know, and we'll get there. So
Yep, we will.
he nudges the guy, and he's like, "Oh, this one's gone. He's dead." And so he throws the container out into the like grass, and then we meet our little girl, who we will eventually know her as Sensico.
Yeah.
Sensico. And we then meet our character who collapsed and died, and he's sitting next to her. And we're getting the idea that this is obviously in the other world. This is kind of like their force ghosts or whatever you want to call them, I guess. And that's where kind of that we don't know what it is yet because we're not sure. By the end of the movie, obviously we figured it out.
So our main characters are Seita, that's the boy,
Seita.
and Setsuko is the little girl. And
Setsuko.
for the sake of us throughout the podcast, we will refer to them as boy and girl.
Yeah, because it's
Sorry, our Japanese is.
we'll just name. We don't want to disrespect the names.
Yeah.
So both our boy and our girl. The girl is obviously she's like a toddler.
She's 4 years old at the start of the movie. We don't know because several months pass throughout the movie. We don't know if she makes it to 5.
Right.
Spoiler. Crap.
And he's 14.
And he's 14. Yeah.
And so they're brother and sister. And so then once the container gets thrown and we see them, the opening credits, which we've talked about in the past, how there's a dearth of good, fun, like opening credits in our movies these days, and this movie does a pretty good job. It gives us kind of they're traveling on the train and giving us some indication of what's going on here, and then we get an air raid.
Yeah.
And they have to. So this is also what I love about this scene is, as a viewer, I felt like I was wanting to be yelling at them, like, "Let's go!
Me too.
What are you doing?" Because
Stop grabbing
right.
treasure trove belongings. Like,
So mom of the is like, "Oh, I'll meet you at the air raid
at the
shelter.
shelter, yeah.
I'll meet you at the shelter. Make sure you meet us there." And he's putting things in the ground and like packing it down, and we're like, "Is this like a treasure? What is the story here?" But we're all, I think we're collectively just going, just go.
Yeah.
yep.
And so mom goes, and then he takes his sister and
Straps her to his back.
straps her to his back.
I thought that was kind of cool how he was carrying her, like
Yeah.
holding his hands behind his back.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's smart because you can only go so fast when you're 4.
Yeah.
You can go fast for a while, then you get tired.
Yep. And so the bombs are falling with people fleeing. And they don't go to the shelter. They get they get waylaid or what happens?
There's fire
everywhere.
Yeah, they have to take a detour.
They take a detour.
They find like a little safe place in like some cubby hole somewhere.
Yep. And the bombs are falling, and there's a moment where they're running, where one of the soldiers commits seppuku. Correct? He says, "Glory to the Emperor," and
and he's just standing there in the fire. Yeah.
I totally missed that.
I saw him holding something. I thought it was a flag.
It's a sword.
Oh.
He's like, "Glory to the Emperor."
Well, I heard what he said, and I was like,
"Yeah,
that was an indication."
You don't see it happen, but you assume he's standing out in the middle of the road while bombs are falling.
Right.
He's done.
He's done. And traditionally in World War II, in Japanese soldier culture, kamikazes was one. They were the pilots,
and that's referred to in the movie.
Yeah, and within the shame dynamic of Japanese soldiers is if you did not do your job well enough, or if you brought shame to your neighborhood, whatever, you would be expected to commit ritual suicide.
It's the idea of restoring honor,
right? Which is a twisted cultural concept that obviously has been rejected for many years now.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Aaron. In a way, yes, but in Asia, honor and shame is still a thing. But I mean, not to the extent of this.
Correct.
But like that's still a thing.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That concept does not go away. But the idea of a organized process by which to atone for that,
right.
that has not continued in Japan.
Sure.
They have changed a lot in the last 70 to 80 years.
Right.
From one culture, from one idea to another. So brother and sister time. There's a lot.
She loses her shoe
in the whole process somehow.
When you're 4, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
There's a lot of devastation. What this movie does well is it does well in showing you what and how rough and awful the bombing campaigns were, and just the untold suffering and all that. And taking a step back from the lens we're looking through, which is obviously right along with the survivors and the people living it, there's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of years about, were we right to drop the bombs and all these other things.
Right.
And I think it's very... it's dangerous to go beyond just what was the reasons and why did they do it, to saying they shouldn't have done it and we shouldn't have, like there's a part of that where it's very dangerous, because it's like, well, students of history understand that if the nuclear bombs had not been used on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it would have been a ground invasion. There was no other way to in effect push Japan to stop to surrender. They would have fought us in the streets. Like, there's documented evidence through documentaries, through research, that they were training the Japanese people in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
In the streets, in the major cities, and the rural areas. It was without question an absolute thing that was going to have to happen. And Allied generals were just like, we have to, if we can't do this, we're going to have to come up with numbers of those that are going to be lost in the invasion and what that's going to look like. And that's a terrifying thing to even consider. But I guess we come back to the Fallout statement. War is hell. War never changes.
Yeah.
And war is rough. War is not pleasant, and it is not even, it is not equal, and it is not just. It is a mess. It is, anyway.
It's like that old saying, all's fair in love and war. Like, gets ugly.
Yep. And so this movie is pretty clear in showing what happens to the Japanese people and the communities.
Yeah, it's no good. This movie also does a brilliant job at showing the relationship between our two main characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you believe that they're real characters and they're real people.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's a cartoon, it's like, we watched the English dub of it, so the girl's voice is slightly annoying. I will say that.
Yeah.
But other than that, fantastic movie. If
Yeah.
we watched it in Japanese, we would have no complaints. But yeah, so like we see these two characters like interact with each other in different ways. Like sometimes they're having fun, they're playing, and other times they're at the lowest of the lows. And
Yeah.
so yeah, right now they're hiding in the cubby hole.
Yep.
And then
They're headed to a school for first aid.
yeah, so she keeps asking like, "Where's mommy?" And he's like, "We're going to go get mommy." and she's like hungry and stuff, and they tell them that they can go to the school to get
Like
food and rations and stuff. And
Sorry.
So they do.
Yeah.
And the doctor says, "Oh, your mom is here." And the first sign.
well, some lady comes up to him and was like, "Have you seen your mom?"
Oh yeah.
That's the aunt, guys.
No, I don't think that's the aunt. I think that's somebody else.
Well, because if it was the aunt, she would have already known about mom's fate at that point.
Yeah,
So that's just someone else.
It's just a neighbor. She's
Okay.
like, "Oh, have
Yeah.
you seen your mom? I'll take care of your sister while you go." And he goes and finds the doctor, and the moment where you, on your end as an adult, get the sense that things are not going well is when he gets the ring.
Yeah.
And it's when the
Yeah.
doctor says you should have this.
And it's like half broken.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not great. And he seems to understand that. Oh no, what do you mean? I don't. He's like, "Come see."
And he walks in on one person who is pretty in bad shape.
Yeah.
And us as a viewer, we're like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
But then he turns the corner and we see his mother, and then it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, for real, oh God."
Yeah.
Like, this is not good.
She's
Like,
fully wrapped up.
For me, that's when I knew when they were going to a separate room because I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
they'll do that in war.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's wrapped up. Her eyes are bloodied. There is blood on her bandages. It is not a pleasant sight, and I think our boy, he seems to know this is not going well,
Yeah.
and he has an understanding. And he tries to talk to his mom. She doesn't respond. She's knocked out. The doctor says we finally got her to sleep because she was really in a lot of pain. And so that's rough. It's rough to see because it's like we had just seen her alive maybe 10 minutes ago, if that, and now we're having to really deal with the fact that this kid and his sister's not gonna have a mom to help him out with.
Yeah, and the poor girl, she just keeps asking about her mother, and he hides it. He doesn't.
But I think she can tell that something's going on that
Yeah.
he's not telling her.
For sure.
Yeah, and there was a moment where later on I thought that she had figured it out, but then we come to find out the aunt had actually said it, so that made that dynamic a little bit whatever. So, and Phil, I've got notes, but I don't have the next pieces in my mind.
So,
They go to the ants.
yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah,
should
they
we
go
talk
to
about the aunt?
Oh, I hate this lady with a passion.
Yeah.
At first, she's a good character. She brings
She
them
buys
in
her
and-
shoes.
Yeah, she buys the
and-
girl,
Yeah.
little girl shoes, but slowly she becomes a mean lady. And
Yeah.
like,
Well, what's interesting is that she has a son of her own,
yeah,
and that
and a daughter.
and a daughter. And so, but they don't interact with their cousins at all.
No,
They
It's just
don't.
weird.
it is weird.
They don't engage with them. And the uncle, the dad, who is he's not the actual, he's the uncle-in-law, I guess.
Yeah,
He's not really any better. He just kind of is like a faceless dad who comes home. Well, I came home from work now, and da-da-da.
yeah, he's not really a character in this
Yeah,
movie.
he's not really engaged. There's nothing of substance to him. But what I think is interesting is that there's not a lot of like the father figure pieces, and I think that probably was intentional because
They're all at war.
they're all at war, or the ones who are left are pretty useless. They're not really all that great,
And they're old.
They're
older
old, yeah,
guys.
and
Well,
they're-
according to the aunt, they're doing all the things.
right.
Oh,
Zoe is expressing frustration at the aunt because as we get to know her, she really leans into the boy being like, well, you should be doing something. Why aren't you working? Well,
You're old enough to go to war. He's
Right.
14.
Right. Well, and he says, my steel factory burned down. My school is burned down. Where do I go? And she has no answer for that. Like she could. Again, Japanese education system at the time was probably different. He couldn't just jump schools.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But
But it's also wartime. The food's running out.
yeah.
Which brings us to where like he goes and digs up.
All that food and everything.
he was so smart.
So
Like, when
So that's what he was burying.
Yes.
Hey.
Yep, so he finds the food, and initially the aunt is like, "Oh, it's not easy to get things," and you
But
sense
she kind of makes a snide remark about, well,
the soldiers are always taken care of, and so you begin to get a sense of like there is some definite jealousy
Oh yeah.
that she's been nursing.
that he shares with all of them very nicely.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, and they don't do anything in return. They give him some rice, but they...
After selling their mother's clothes.
Yes.
And they think that they're entitled to that food.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so sickening.
You're not meant to like the aunt in any regard. You're just kind of meant to...
I mean, she actually says, you know what, fend for yourselves.
And they do.
Yeah.
They go and he goes and he buys him and his little sister a stove.
Yep.
So that they can cook.
Which
And
then
she's like,
makes
you
her
did
mad.
that to spite me. Look,
Right.
you told them to get their own food. What do you expect?
Right.
There's a moment where like he just lays back on the floor, and the little girl's like, "That's bad manners," and he's like, "We can sit however we want."
Yeah.
That's right.
And
But
then
I was thinking from like, as an elementary school kid, like little kids, they do well with structure.
Oh,
if you
yeah.
start saying you can do whatever, they're like,
what?
I love it too
it messes
because
with their brain.
she hears that and all she does is just uncross her legs.
Just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Like,
Yeah.
she's like, "Fine, I will sit here."
I can play with that. I can do a little bit.
So it's just this movie has so many little moments between them two that are
and
like,
then she acts surprised that they're leaving. Ma'am.
Yeah,
you
so-
literally kicked
I
them
wanted
out.
a little more remorse. I know. I was like, you have the nerve to look surprised.
Yeah. So then I think it's either the next day where he tells the aunt mom died at the hospital. She didn't even make it out of the
Yeah.
school. She died at the school. And aunt's like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" And it's like, I was trying to protect my sister. I didn't want to worry anybody. Like, I just was trying. And like, genuinely, he probably just.
And she makes her, you need to tell your father.
And he's like, "I already did." Like, well, he didn't. He doesn't.
we didn't see that though.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he really did write his dad or not.
I kind of took it. I tended to believe it because he makes the comment of like, it's been like, that was like 10 days ago. And she's
Yeah.
like, that's strange. And I think that was a moment of like things really unraveling with the aunt because I think she's realizing, oh, these kids are on their own.
Yeah,
They're not going to get any help. It
Yeah.
is, and that
Yeah.
doesn't help the situation.
Yeah, so I can see where you're going with that, Phil, but I also wonder. And he may because it could have been he just was trying to make her happy, like just trying to get her off his back. I sent a letter 10 days ago. It's fine. But the other thing is that I think he does. I mean, obviously he misses his father. We find out later how much, like, and the reality of what he's discovered. So yeah, she is an unkind lady, and the aunt can.
I'm just like, how are you calling these two kids lazy when they
Right.
are clearly
Right.
surviving?
Right.
Like,
One
on
is
their-
4.
Yeah. One's 4
Yeah.
years old. And she gets mad because the 4-year-old is having nightmares and crying at night.
Oh, that really triggered me. I was like, are you kidding me? Her
I
mom is dead. Like,
And she's
I
got
love the
trauma.
response though, because like they just ignore her.
Right.
Yeah.
Just keep on going.
They don't even. He doesn't even look at her while she's in there just blabbing.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like he's accepting that he's got nothing. He can't change her. She's going to keep doing this. She's going to keep being mean.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, all he cares about is his little sister.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like,
He does. So mail the letter. Aunt and the uncle. The uncle says the war is hopeless.
yeah.
And this is the first indication that we're going to get that things are not going well for the Japanese people in the war. And because it's not, I don't know what what uncle does for a job, but he's clearly in the government somewhere or does something low level. But yeah, he says the war is hopeless. And then we've been in devastation, but then we go to the ocean.
yeah.
And
Yeah, they go to the beach.
It's bright sunshine. He's chasing the sister.
Yeah, they're playing, having a good
giggling,
time.
They're playing, they're swimming.
But there's tragedy even.
Yeah, there's
here.
like flashbacks to like their mom and
Yeah.
going to the beach and then eating and
Yeah.
I mean, there's people trying to harvest sea salt.
Yeah,
so
they make
can
soy
eat,
sauce. Yeah, that's what he
and they come across.
Yeah.
Oh,
Little
yeah, that's right.
little girl comes across the body, and he's like, "Don't look at it."
Yeah.
Well, and she's like, is he sleeping?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna go away right now. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So then they're trading. So the clothes situation happens now, where the aunt takes mom's clothes and says, "We can get good rice for this clothing," and our girl loses it. And
Oh, yeah,
this
she's
is the
like-
moment where I think the little girl, started to figure out, mom's not coming back, because she throws a hissy fit, and her
And
brother
brother just takes.
has to pull her off
Yeah.
it. But she literally sits and will not engage with him. Totally disassociates, and I think she even just kind of shakes her body like no.
Yeah.
Like she's not having it. But in that moment I was like, she knows. or at least she suspects.
She's starting to figure it out.
Something. If they're taking my mom's clothes for food,
and brother isn't trying to stop them.
right? Brother
Me.
isn't fighting hard. He's trying to keep me out of the. So she's probably again in her 4-year-old mind, going something bad has happened because if those clothes are going, mom's not coming back.
Right.
And that's again the danger of not telling a 4-year-old and helping them to process through the grieving process.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of like surprised and wait, what do you mean? And then their brain gets short circuited.
Yeah, where she's sitting there crying and he tries to cheer her up by doing this little thing on like a handbar.
Right.
And he's like, "Look, I'm good at this," and she just won't look at him.
Yep.
Like I totally forgot about that. Like I forgot a lot about this movie actually.
Yeah.
Since the first time I've seen it.
It was probably a good review for you, but also just a viewing purpose for me. But yeah, he genuinely understands his sister. Kind of what you talked about earlier. It's like their relationship is clearly defined, and they do care for each other, and they are fleshed out enough that they are brother and sister.
Well, they're all they got.
Yeah, and he's trying to make her happy and bring a smile, and so he's going with probably what he's done before, where he's done something funny, and she's like, "Oh, that's funny," but now it's the emotional weight of the loss that she's now contemplating dealing with. It's too heavy that there's no way that he's going to be able to seesaw her out of that situation.
Yeah. And is this when they decide to leave?
Not yet.
There's an air raid here again.
Yep, and that's
on the beach, and
then they end up at the other. So there's a lot of different shelters in the area.
Mm-hmm.
They're not much to look at.
Yeah,
honestly.
well, they don't go to the normal ones. The boy and our girl, they go to this one that's way off the beaten path.
It's abandoned.
And
it almost looks like a mine shaft. That's what I thought it was the first time I watched this movie.
But at the end, we kind of realize it's not abandoned because someone's house is. They left and went somewhere.
Yeah, it's like across the river, or lake, or wherever. Yeah,
that was their shelter, and that's a whole other conversation when we get to that point.
Yeah.
So I just made notes of like aunt is jerky. She says, "Don't you have other relatives in Tokyo?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't know how to get a hold of them. I don't know."
Like a needle in a haystack.
Like, I don't know what you want from me.
I'm a minor. Like
Right.
I just don't. I can't.
Yeah.
So
well, that was the thing about World War II. There was a lot of underage enlisters, like 14, 16, trying to, even here in America.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Especially in Japan, as the war started to reach its kind of endpoint, they were throwing, especially in Japan and Germany, they were throwing kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched Jojo Rabbit.
Right. Yeah.
That, again, a bit of blown out of proportion, but it's not that far from the truth. The Hitler Youth was being thrown on the front lines in Berlin on that day when the Allies and the Russians were slamming in. Aunt is still angry, so he goes and he purchases some stuff. And this is the whole situation where she's mad about it. The sugar water. There's no more candy.
Oh yeah, that was cute.
Yeah, he took the last little bit.
That's resourceful. Yeah.
And again, trying to make this girl happy, trying to make her feel like she has something to hold on to,
And giving her a little bit of electrolytes and stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to let her live a normal kid life.
Yeah.
She makes a statement when they're in the air raid shelter, or on the way to the air raid shelter. She says, "I hate living with her."
Yeah.
It's a lot
me.
for a 4-year-old to
for
say
a 4-year-old to finally reach that point of going, "I hate living with her. I don't like it. It's not my. It's hard." They then end up back at the house and they start singing with the piano, and the aunt loses it again. Why are you?
This is wartime.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me, we can't be happy at all.
No music.
Oh my god!
Can we have a little hope? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
There's no hope in this house. Apparently, that's the rule in this woman's house, which you have to wonder, like. Her husband is so like quiet.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't speak a lot. You have to wonder like what his position in that house is. Does he get sassed at? Does he get beat up verbally by her?
I don't know, because when she made that comment about the stove and he goes, well, finally they're cooking for themselves.
Yeah.
So he kind of like feels the same way, like they're
Oh.
putting them out or something.
So they're kind of the same kind of people with the
Yeah.
kid. Like there's not really a lot of redemption in him either, because he's just as much of a jerk as
And honestly, they're kids either.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, stand up for your cousins. Like, I don't. I would stand up for my cousins.
Right. It is.
I'm just saying.
It is definitely an interesting family dynamic.
Yeah.
She kind of fulfills the ugly stepsister, stepmother kind of vibe that we get from Disney.
Worse.
Yeah. No, she's downright cruel. So she throws more verbal abuse at him. And then we get to the Fireflies lines and the pieces of that.
I have a tie-in. Fact, if you look at the theatrical poster, and if you light it up in the right way, you can see what looks like fireflies are actually like bomber planes.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was an interesting Easter egg. And there's a remark made in the movie when they see some kamikaze pilots, and she goes, "They look like fireflies."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go. We got our connection.
I was like, "Wow, that's such."
Well, and I guess like the missiles or like whatever were coming out. I'm not good with gun terminal. I don't know.
It'd be the same.
But they kind of do look like fireflies because they're like lit up and they're falling down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we get to see Dad's cruiser, his ship.
Yeah.
Told through the fireflies and all that kind of imagery.
I thought that was so cool.
This is way later though. Yeah. This is after they move out.
Yeah. So it's like that was kind of cool. Then we find out that Aunt told her that her mom died.
I mean,
she told the 4-year-old and
probably didn't tell her in a gentle way that you would want to tell her for you. Probably in the
said, "Your mom's dead,"
spite and yelling and get over it, kid.
This was after they moved out, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And we find out, yeah.
And he just emotionally loses it because
they move into the shelter.
Yep.
And it's so cute when they first move in. She's like, "This is our kitchen and this is our front door." Like,
where's the bathroom?
It can be anywhere.
Yeah, I'm like, y'all they made a pretty good setup out of that.
Yeah.
With they survived there for a while.
They did indeed. And then so they're running out of food. And they have to steal tomatoes.
Yeah.
Which they do. They steal some tomatoes. This then leads to more stealing, and they get caught. Yeah. He gets caught.
Yes, because his sister's really sick.
Yeah, and he's just like, can you just, I'll never do it again. And he's like, no, you're going to the police station. What I found really either interesting or intentional or both is that she steps up and says, hey, like says his name several times, loud enough that I think the guy who's holding him off to the police, like turns to her, but then just keeps going.
Yeah.
Doesn't even care.
Yeah.
So war can do awful things to people.
Well, I think it's just
eating children.
He does. Like we see him at the police station. He's
and thankfully that officer takes it. It's one of the better ones. He's just like, it could be assault.
Yeah, and
he's like, bye.
Not just that. He literally stands up, grabs his sword, holds it out for a few inches, and says that could be considered assault. That is an absolute threat that you will walk away, or I'm going to put you in jail by force.
But he beat that kid to a pulp.
Literally.
I'm surprised he's still conscious.
But what's interesting is, again, there's this indifference towards this kid because nobody seems to care enough to help him. And yes, they're all enduring their own struggles. They're
all
situation.
starving to death.
And like, I get in their culture, like respecting elders and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, well, children are your life force. Yeah. Like they are gonna be your next. So can we please treat them with some kindness too?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like, well, I never lived in Japan, but where I was at in Asia, if you were like a parentless child, if you were an orphan, you're the low of the low in society. Like the idea of you even like helping those kids out. Like I taught English to a lot of those kids, and it was like, why would you help them?
Well, like, why not? Like,
it's a different value.
Future.
I think there's different cultures value kids differently, and I think also we're talking like World War II, we're talking like everyone is in disaster mode.
Oh yeah.
And they've got enough to worry about. They've got enough trying to figure out how to feed but you do notice that a lot, like the farmer that he keeps going back to, farmer's pretty well fed.
Yeah.
Farmer's not starving.
Literally.
That's accurate.
Farmer's got enough food for himself. I do find it interesting that with the exception of the like sheriff or police officer, who did intervene and kind of said, you need to walk, you need to leave, and or else I'm taking you in. Nobody really stands up for this kid or cares about him. And I found it interesting that the officer didn't really try and help him beyond him leaving.
Yeah.
And I think...
Do you think they were able to help?
I don't know.
That's my devil's advocate
Well, 'cause
question.
everyone's excuse is like, it's wartime, like we're all struggling.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, but you're all being like extremely selfish at the same time.
Yeah.
Because this child was selfless enough to share his food with his whole family.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can't do the same for a child. Like, I don't get that.
Was there's that saying, you can't do everything, but you could do something.
Yeah.
Right.
The scene where he walks out of the sheriff's office and his little sister's sitting there and he looks at her, just starts bawling.
Yeah.
And she says something like, she just wants to help him.
She said, "Oh, should I call a doctor?"
Yeah.
And I think that's a line he uses earlier with her.
Later on.
Okay, I can't remember if it was before
Yeah.
or later.
I think it was before, actually, because she was saying that she's basically going to the bathroom too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, should I get
Like she's
Yeah,
in
she's
bad
sick.
shape.
I should get you a doctor."
I am not convinced it's just like a malnutrition thing. There's got to be more
No,
going on.
I'm not either because of all the rashes.
Yeah.
My guess is that between probably like with the food and foodborne issues and the water issues, like she was malnutrition, but that malnutrition,
Like dysentery, maybe.
yeah, dysentery, like all of that compounds when you talk about starvation and you talk about like situations where there's not enough good food or good nutrition.
Or sanitation, like
Right,
cholera.
that all leads into like it becomes more complex. Like it goes from malnutrition to dysentery to cholera. It's like it's
It compounds, yeah.
it's an orders of magnitude that just gets worse and worse untreated. And that's the part that sucks is that these two are clearly trying to do their best. I mean, he's 14 years old.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
He's a child. He's a parentified child.
Yeah.
This is I'm taking over your counselor's corner thing.
No,
That's what I
it's-
kept thinking of.
It's just so sad because he's like asking the doctor for help. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, she just needs food. Well, and he's like, where am I supposed to get that? Like,
Right.
Yeah. And that's a rare moment where he yells.
Yeah.
He gets loud in
Yeah.
that moment. And I love it because we don't see him do that very often in the rest of the movie. And what they do there is they give you a sign that he's at his breaking point.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have no other option. I'm at the end of my rope. I don't have I got nothing else. Like, what do you want from me? And the doctor's just so indifferent because the next patient walks in, he says, you just need to go get her some food.
As a burnt out doctor.
Yeah. Well, and he's probably trying to like see as many patients as he can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then he decides, he's like, I'll just go and withdraw the last of my mom's money and
Yep.
get her some good food.
Yep. And as a viewer, we've understood that she's probably not doing well.
Oh, she's really not doing it.
You can see her ribs.
It gets to a point where she's so hungry, she almost swallows a marble.
Yeah.
Because she thought it was a fruit drop.
Yeah. So we get to that heartbreaking scene where she's like sucking on something. She's like,
She talks about seeing fireflies. That's when I knew. I was like,
and he's
oh
like,
no.
what do you have in your mouth? No, those aren't candy. And then she points to some rocks. Oh, I made
you rice balls.
I made you rice balls for you. And he is like, he gives her watermelon. It doesn't make much of a difference.
Too late.
It's a lot. And I was more worried she was going to either like double over and throw up because what people experience when they don't eat a lot of like when they're malnutrition, and then you like give them a fine dining experience, their stomach says no, bad, bleh. And that's a thing.
I mean, there's stories in World War II of that happening to a lot of people in concentration camps.
Right.
Those who were like in better shape ended up like getting the food, and then they ended up dying because they were so malnourished that it backfired. It was those that were like sicker but still hanging around that ended up more likely to survive.
Yep. So he goes out to cook the dinner because he got a chicken, he got rice.
And then you get one of the most powerful,
Yeah.
deep lines of the whole movie.
Yep.
And it's, she never woke up.
She never woke up.
And when I first saw this movie, it was late at night, in the middle of COVID,
Right.
all by myself.
I
Tears
was there. I was
pouring
just
down my
asleep.
face. Yeah, I shook you trying to wake you up, but you was like, nah. Like,
So we need your sleep, okay?
Yes.
In your defense, I've woken up Aaron before because I've been like, I just need a hug.
yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah. It
Aaron
happens.
knows.
It happens. But that is a line that is really
It hurts.
yeah. And it's said so effortlessly. It's not said with like a music build up. It's just there.
Also, it's the first narration in the whole movie. There's not like narrative voice.
Yeah.
This is the first time where you hear like him narrating.
Yeah.
I think it's even worse because we kind of skipped a part at the bank of him basically finding out that his dad's probably dead too.
Oh yeah, they found out
So,
the war was over.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you, Zoe. So yeah, he walks into the bank and is withdrawing money, and they're like saying something about like, oh, they've surrendered, and he's like, what?
Yeah.
The great Japanese army has surrendered, and they're like, where have you been? Yeah, no, we're done. It's like,
I've been trying to keep my sister alive. What have you been doing?
Where are all the ships? But they're like, oh, all the ships are deep. They're deep in they're gone.
Yeah.
It's over. The war is over. We've surrendered. It's over. And yeah, he realizes his dad's not coming home, and it answers the question of why the letters never came back.
Right.
Yeah.
His father is gone.
Well, he said like all the naval ships were at the bottom of the ocean. I was like, what?
They sunk them all.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the once glorious Japanese Navy, which started out in December of 1941, by the end of the war in 45 into 46.
I've got a thing.
Yep.
Oh, you finish your thought too.
No, go ahead.
So according to the movie, the children's father was a captain in the Imperial Japanese Navy who served aboard the Maya. I'm sorry, I don't know how to speak Japanese. A Takao class heavy cruiser which participated in a number of naval engagements during the Second World War. On October 23rd, 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the Maya was torpedoed by an American submarine and sank with the loss of 479 men, including the ship's captain.
So that's not said in the movie at all. Is this movie based off real? I need to watch the bonus features. That's what I need to
more
do.
than likely. So here's the cool thing about this movie is that it's not explicit, right? We understand he's a captain of a ship.
Yeah.
He is. That's Dad's ship. But we're never given a name.
Right.
We're never given like.
I think we are given the name of the ship at least.
Okay.
Because he asked the guys like, "What about this ship? Was it sunk?"
Oh yeah. And he's
And
like,
they're
I
like-
don't know. I'm just
Like all the ships were sunk.
Yeah. So I think you're right. That is I did forget that part. But I think what this movie does is that it references enough reality so that there's a lot of truth to it because these things happened. The bombings of the Japanese the Doolittle raids in Japan were employed to crush Japanese opposition or Japanese support of the war to get them to surrender. And then it took 2 atom bombs to take care of that and to ensure that the surrender would occur. Which again sucks because
this movie does not mention at all.
So
It says that they surrendered, but they don't say why.
and I wondered at the beginning of the movie when they're driving on that train and the light gets bright.
Yeah.
I was wondering
I
if
thought
that was
that
an
was.
atom bomb.
I thought so too.
I did too.
So I'm wondering if that was kind of their nod to that without really going into it.
Yeah, and that could honestly be them not talking about the surrender. That could be part of the honor shame too.
Well, yeah, because it's like in Godzilla. That's what Godzilla's supposed to represent.
Yeah.
Is so maybe Japan they're like we're not talking about this.
Right.
Like
We don't want to shame our leaders.
yeah.
Yeah, it's World War II in Japan is complicated. There is a lot of historical. The emperor who was the emperor during World War II maintained his emperorship. The dude visited with George Bush, like the second George Bush, like
George W. Bush.
Yeah,
Wow.
Emperor Hirohito was still in power throughout until his death, and so it's kind of interesting for us because we think of like, well, Hitler would have been all the Nazis were put on war trial.
Stalin,
yeah, all those guys.
Mussolini.
But, yeah, Hirohito, he stuck around, and that was part of the negotiations, I believe, with keeping the emperor in power at least to help the Japanese have some continuation of power. And again, they worshiped the guy. It was a very different culture, very different world.
Mm-hmm.
Still similar now, but the changes that the Japanese culture and country and economy have gone through in the last 70, 80 years has been insane and incredible and mind-blowing. Where are we at?
He's got to bury his sister.
Okay.
Or cremate.
his
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
So again, this movie, it's a lot of showing. It's not telling you. It's just here's what's happening. Here's how it's going. And you realize it as the guy's like, okay, well, here's the charcoal. And it's like an everyday thing for him. It's another day ending in Y.
Oh man, that kind of
It's like,
pissed
oh,
me
you
off.
should probably be at a temple. And I'm like, it's war. He's 14.
Right.
His
Doesn't he-
sister's dead.
Doesn't he say something like, all things considered, it's a wonderful day or a beautiful day or something.
Don't.
Right.
Just don't.
That's called toxic positivity.
Well, and I think it's also like he's probably had to do this with so many people.
Yeah.
In the last however many weeks, months, year, like this has been his norm, and so he's in Counselor's Corner, he's become just kind of like, this is normal for me.
Yeah.
It's just another day ending in Y. It's 12 o'clock. Who's coming next for a thing for me to give him the ability to like do this?
Cremate their loved one.
And that's a horrifying
Or does
statement
awful things to people.
on the state, like a horrifying statement on the situation in that community. And that situation is, yeah, this is normal.
It did bring up some questions of like, I guess it's like cremation, like their main thing in Japan, like that's what they do.
It
when
was
people die.
during the wars, like everywhere.
Yeah.
The main thing, because there was just a lot.
Because then he mentions like going to his mom's grave, so I was like, well, I thought she was cremated.
She was.
So-
that's what that box he's carrying around.
So, but then they buried the box.
No, he's carried it around the whole time.
No, we're talking about their mom. So not sister, mom.
Oh,
So mom was probably and so that was the question. That's a good question.
Yeah.
So we see a flicker of a scene where bodies are being put in a mass grave.
yeah.
And I think that's where mom ends up.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I agree.
That there's that he's telling himself the lie that there is a grave marked.
With a beautiful tree.
Well, because that box he's carrying around, and it shows a scene where like it starts glowing red color, like when.
I mean,
thought
I
was
took
the
that as like
sister.
the ashes of his mom, but
Yeah.
No, we don't have mom's ashes.
I thought it was his sister's ashes.
Yeah, it's sister's ashes. Sister's ashes are in that little container of the candy.
Yeah, he put sister's ashes in the fruit. Drop
this is like a
container.
wooden box
Yeah.
that he actually hides from the ant and everything in the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's
Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
I-
So that's what confused me, but I think you're right along the lines of like he's just trying to make this pretty.
Right.
Memory.
Because
Yeah.
we get that and that scene, it's so fast. It's so brief that you go, wait, what was that? And I think what I feel like, I don't really know for certain, is that because that's a lot of what happened in the war when we had all these bodies that were needing to be disposed of. Mass burials were the best that they could do sometimes, and I think that's where mom ended up. And I think him saying, "Oh, we'll go see it sometime," is him trying to get his sister to survive, to try and we'll go find mom. But yeah,
Right.
this scene with the burning and that is
yeah where he cremate. Yeah, so he
Cremation.
puts his sister's ashes in the fruit container.
That we
Yeah.
mentioned at the beginning.
Which, if you think back to the beginning of the
Right.
show where we were mentioned that
yeah
officer dude just chucks it,
yeah
and then
doesn't even care.
and the movie just like ends.
Yep, and that's it.
but I mean,
Yes, Zoe.
honestly, just from personal experience, they are very morbid with that anyway. My mom's ashes were literally sent in the United States postal mail.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, even today, I don't think there's really a great way of,
Yeah.
like,
My grandma was
sending you the ashes, I guess.
my grandma was cremated, but I don't know what happened with her ashes.
Speaking of which, we
I'd have
need to
ask
make
my mom.
sure you know who needs.
Yeah. So
So, I'm just saying, in 2024, we're still not very good at.
well, so
That.
not that we're just like there's been recent issues in Colorado specifically
Yeah.
where people have been getting the wrong ashes
Oh, that's horrible.
or they've not gotten the real ashes. They've gotten like actual just like sand.
Sand?
Yeah, because the people who are running these places aren't actually cremating the bodies or are doing it like not like it is badonkadonk. If you want to deep dive into the insanity of humanity, I'm a poet, didn't even know it. Into the insanity of the human, whatever you want to call it. Google like cremation controversies Colorado. It's going to make you go, what in the world and how hard is it to not do this the right way?
Like,
how
literally.
do you
You put one in at a time.
right and then you empty those
Yeah.
into a container.
Yeah.
You give it to the family, you take their money. Like, what is wrong with you? But apparently this is just too much for people
Jeez
to do as a
Louise.
business.
Speaking of sadness, so I have a thing I was waiting to share for the end when we talked about the fruit
Yeah, yeah.
container. All right, so let me read this. The fruit drops that Setsuko eats, they were made by Tsukumu Sika Confectionery, which was established in 1908. The company went out of business during World War II due to the short supply of sugar. But after the war, 2 people from the original company founded 2 new companies, with one keeping the original name and selling candies in red tins and the other selling candies in green tins. This is where we get to the sad part. A few years ago, Sukuma released limited edition tin cans that resembled the ones seen in the movie. Wait for it. Some variations of these tins also had a picture of Setsuko looking through her tin for the last drop.
Ugh.
I know.
That's horrible.
Isn't that just terrible?
Because at first I was like, "Ooh, I want one," and then when you
Yeah.
said
I know,
that,
that
I'm
was
like,
the part that I read it. I was like, just wait, because I was just like,
No. Oh, that's horrible.
I'm sure wherever they are, they're probably worth some money now.
oh my gosh,
Probably, yeah.
Good lord.
I mean,
tear
it's
at our
anything-
heartstrings.
if it's anything like this movie, you're not going to get them anyway.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Never gonna find anything. So yeah, we get the full closure. That she obviously dies. He dies.
Now they're together.
And now they're together.
With the
and
Fireflies.
The Fireflies. And yeah, so the great with the Fireflies, the connection is that when they're living at the shelter, they capture the Fireflies in the mosquito net, and obviously they all die.
Yes.
And they make a makeshift like place to bury them. And
Yeah, that's so sad for a 4-year-old to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, in some ways, and this is, again, we're swerving in and out of Counselor's Corner every so often here, but there was almost kind of like that was symbolistic for her, and she was burying her mom with those Fireflies, where she's able to grieve.
Yeah, she was processing, I think.
Yeah, in small capacity, like, this is what I would want to do with my mom, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's
And how they like laid the food out for them, and
yep.
it was
So we also forgot to mention. So we got a montage at the end here.
yeah.
And I wasn't sure what to make of this. I appreciated it, but I think it was almost like these are the scenes of her being alone while he was out doing his thing.
That's what I thought too.
And so
Yeah.
there's one that we all picked up on, that she was playing rock, paper, scissors with her reflection in the water.
And you're like, you're not gonna win, kid.
no.
It's just, but it's like, what do you do when you're stuck and your brother tells you don't leave and you don't want to leave because you only get in trouble? Like, what do you do to amuse yourself? And so it gives us these different things that she does to amuse herself and to like pass the time.
There's another one too that she does is where she's got like a sheet.
She's just running around like a ghost.
and she is completely naked. I
Yep.
don't know if you noticed that, but I'm like, yes, little kids do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's hilarious. You're like, stop, the window's open.
But then she was also acting like a little adult, like cleaning and
Yeah.
gardening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
playing house and stuff.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And so yeah, that's the end. What you mentioned, or someone mentioned, so that shelter was a shelter for a pretty rich family. And so what they do is they come back
Oh,
after
this
the
is
war.
annoying. This makes me mad.
I know.
So they were gone from that home. And their return means that they were rich enough and well off enough that they could go wherever it was to be safe, so that they wouldn't have to be under threat.
Whole family, father, mother, and daughters. Oh, we're back.
Oh, I forgot how lovely
And I'm
it
just like,
is.
I can't believe none of them are even injured. Like,
Right.
family's
their house is
completely intact.
fine.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's why I was like, stupid lucky.
Yeah.
Can't even.
House is fine, everything else like that. But it's interesting that they're in the shadow of their home is this ragtag kind of shelter that may not have been a shelter in the first place. It just might be like a mine or a place for them to, like, I don't know what it
But
is.
then
Yeah.
also in the back of my mind, I'm like, why didn't you just go in that house?
And I think so. That's where I was gonna go next, because it's almost like why? Because during the air raids, he routinely goes and steals stuff from the aunt's house.
Yeah.
Like
Which I
he-
loved.
Yeah, as a normally straight edge kind of like law abiding citizen, I was like, you go, man, you go.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't work out because he takes the clothing to some lady to sell it. She's like, that's not your mom's clothes. I don't believe you. And he's
Yeah,
just,
stop
How
trying
would
to
you know,
pawn off
lady?
your garbage.
Those are just rags. And I'm like, oh, you just can't afford it. Okay.
or also because aunt is probably cheap
That's
and doesn't buy the
fair.
nice things.
Yeah.
Which is also a statement on her again. And no, none of us like her.
No.
She's just a mean lady. Yeah, so it's you have to pay attention to this movie. You can't look away. You can't.
It's very fast paced, actually.
Yeah, it moves.
Because you'll miss details if you look
Yep.
away.
Yeah, because I was getting up a couple times to do like dinner stuff like that, and I came back and I was like, oh man, I missed it.
I didn't want to look away.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It draws you in
Well,
for
it's
sure.
visually arresting. It visually is like, this is different.
Yeah.
I'm not used to seeing this artistic style in display.
Dude, even when she like pricked her finger and the blood was coming
Yeah.
out, that was so realistic looking.
Yeah.
Like that's how your blood, you know.
Yeah.
Like that was so cool.
It was
We
pretty
need to
awesome.
do more Studio Ghibli movies.
It's apparently on our
Well,
list
the
now.
ones you can buy here. I guess.
That's literally the only one that you can't.
That is ridiculous. Please, sir, bring it back.
We need to write a letter to the people who own the license or whatever.
Yeah.
Those jerks. All right.
Why
Well,
are you keeping such an important movie?
yeah.
It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And the audience score is like 99.
yeah,
And I always say that it's missing that 1% because it's so sad.
that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It is. It's intense. It'll make you feel.
But it's real life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Something that circling back to the aunt before we close this out, what I love is as they're so they leave the house, they move out, and she's like, "Oh, okay, well, bye now," and then she hears the laughter from the
I love
girl,
it.
and she just kind of snaps her head around, and there's this look of both like annoyance, but also like, oh, what is that sound?
Yeah.
I've heard that. That's a sound I haven't heard in such a long time, and it's almost this moment of going. That's her almost realizing, oh man, like
I'm in bad shape when
Right.
you're at the point where like the laughter of children makes you angry. You're in bad
well,
shape.
not even just angry. Like it kind of shakes her. Like she's just like, what is that sound? I never heard her make that sound in my house. It's because well, you were an awful human being to her.
yeah.
You
Now she's happy.
Right now she's happy to be
And
free of
free.
you. Dobby's a free elf.
yeah.
And unfortunately, this is a terrible connection. Spoiler
Aaron.
alert, Dobby dies too.
Yeah.
yes.
He does.
It's all death. It's everybody dies. Sorry, that's
very unhappy with you for making that connection.
Hell,
It's not necessary.
I'm a language arts teacher. I connect everything. Everything's connected.
I think she can't even today. I'm doing fine over here.
No,
Zoe's having a party. See,
I
let's
know
go.
you're like he's targeting. What did I do to you?
I'm not.
Wash the dishes.
Whoa.
Okay, sorry. I should,
Well. Okay.
Now she's calling you out.
Anyway,
I just don't understand why I'm being targeted.
I'm not.
What is happening?
I don't know, and I love it.
I can't even with you now.
I just said she was going like
Taking shots at everybody. Phil, you're next. Buckle up, buddy. I don't know what I've
He's
done.
like, I'm just sitting here.
Yeah, literally.
just
That's all
chilling.
I'm doing.
Why are you gonna come after me, bro? Anyway, so there you go. Grave of the Fireflies. We'll go around and give our ratings on this one. I really like 10 out of 10. Just artistic stuff. Like just every element of this movie fires. There's not a moment where you're like, a little bit of a plot hole.
Right.
The beauty of it is because they're 14 and 4. Any logic that you try and apply to the plot holes immediately is answered by their age.
Yeah.
It's also answered by they're in the middle of a war zone. They're in the middle of post-apocalyptic Japan. And so there's a lot of things that their motivations or what they do or how they do it where you can't really question it because it's not like they're living a comfortable life. They are in survival mode.
Yeah.
Totally.
They are absolutely hungry every single day trying to figure something out. I mean, he feeds her ice chips off of the ground from the farmer cutting the ice pieces.
I thought it was rice. I was hoping it was like actual food.
Because I asked as we were watching, I'm like, what is that? And then Phil's like, that's ice chips.
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
like,
he was.
oh, no.
The humanity. Sorry,
Yeah,
it just
it's-
went right into that for me.
Yeah, it is. Humanity's terrible. These two characters really do go through a lot.
Yeah.
And they don't get any relief. They don't get any help. They don't get any mercy or grace from anybody, especially the aunt. And that's rough.
Yeah.
So yeah, 10 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. If this movie ever gets out of the licensing trap that it's stuck in, that'll be a good day. All right,
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know what your answer is.
10 out of 10
Yeah,
also. Yeah.
This is your 10 out of 10 movie that we've been trying to sit down and finally watch for months.
This is I have a few 10 out of 10 movies. I feel like this is the most important one.
Yeah.
Well, like,
Fair.
yeah, for historical context, like, it helps you understand what life was like on that other side of things in that world that we, as Americans, we didn't often get to see or understand why war never changes and why war is hell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's coming from Japan's
Yeah.
perspective, and it's a Japanese movie. So you will hear anti-American, like they're not nice to Americans. They don't like them.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just, the movie's just so real, and for it to be a cartoon, you know, you don't expect that, because
Disney.
I literally put it on the first night I watched it because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I just saw Studio Ghibli, and it was actually on streaming.
Really?
I think Netflix or something.
Okay.
But now it's gone, sadly. If you guys out there can ever get your hands on this movie, do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah.
All right, Vicki.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, I can't think of any flaws.
Yeah.
I came over here, I'm like, oh God, I hope I did not hype this movie up too much.
That's always the worry, right? Because we had that worry for each of us with our 10 out of 10s. We're like,
Yeah.
ooh, is it going to hold up? Is it going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are they going to come for me? And for the most part, overall, we've ended up in, all of us have agreed these are pretty good movies.
Yeah.
All right, Zoe.
Definitely 10 out of 10. I'm actually excited to watch it again. I know that might sound weird, but
Yeah.
I feel like I maybe missed some things that I want to go back and...
Yeah.
Because it was really like,
Yeah.
Right.
you're in it immediately. Like,
Yep.
they're getting bombed and then just keep going on
Things
from there.
happen, yep.
So, I loved it.
Well, there you go. Well, that is Grave of the Fireflies, an excellent movie. Again, if you have a chance to see it, you should absolutely give it your best go to check it out. What are we doing next?
We got to do Rat Race
We gotta do
still.
Rat Race eventually. Yeah.
Oh, come on, Aaron.
Okay, yeah, we do. It's an okay. I haven't seen it in a long time, so we'll see how my perspective has changed over the years.
It's better than It's a Mad World.
I won't disagree with you there. I
And the
I know
actors
there
and
are people.
actresses.
There are people
Yes.
out there that are like, look, they want my address now because I said that. But yeah, sorry,
you're not getting his address.
no, not today.
I think it's an easier plot to follow.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a lot more direct.
Yes.
It's not as weavy and windy and wild.
Well, it's got some wildness. You should have bought a squirrel.
I love Kathy Bates. Oh my god. Okay, we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about when we get to that. All right. Well, that'll be next time. For now, my name is Aaron,
I am Phil.
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Zoe.
and this has been Nerds by Screenlight. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Nerds by Screenlight podcast, presented by Create at Morgan Productions, located in Fort Morgan, Colorado, USA. For more information on our production house, other podcasts hosted here, and further details, please visit www.createatmorgan.org. You can find us on Twitter at the handle CreateAtMorgan. Create at Morgan is a school club at Lincoln High School, our alternative education campus in Morgan County. Our sponsor is Aaron DeLay, the language arts teacher at Lincoln. Send any feedback to adelayedteacher@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to our podcast.